Torah reading for Shemot. Parshat Shemot. Exodus 1:1-6:1. First portion. Exodus chapter 1. 1. And these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt, with Jacob, each man and his household came. And these are the names of the sons of Israel, although God counted them in their lifetime by their names. Genesis 46 verses 8-27. He counted them again after their death, to let us know how precious they are to him, because they were likened to the stars, which he takes out from beyond the horizon, and brings in by number and by name, as it is said, who takes out their host by number. All of them he calls by name. Isaiah 40 verse 26. From Tanshuma Buber, Shemot 2, Exodus Rabbah 1:3. 2. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. 3. Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. 4. Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. 5. Now all those descended from Jacob were 70 souls, and Joseph, who was in Egypt. And Joseph, who was in Egypt, now were not he and his sons included in the 70. What then does this teach us? Did we not know that he was in Egypt? But this clause comes to inform you of Joseph's righteousness. He, the Joseph who tended his father's flocks, is the same Joseph who was in Egypt and became a king, and he retained his righteousness. From Sifri Hazina 3:34. 6. Now Joseph died, as well as all his brothers and all that generation. 7. The children of Israel were fruitful and swarmed and increased and became very, very strong, and the land became filled with them. And swarmed, they bore 6 children at each birth. 8. A new king arose over Egypt, who did not know about Joseph. A new king arose. There is a controversy between Rav and Samuel. One says, he was really new, and the other one says, his decrees were new. From Sota 11a, Exodus Rabbah 1:8, since the Torah does not say, the king of Egypt died, and a new king arose, it implies that the old king was still alive, only that his policies had changed, and he acted like a new king. Rashi on Sota 11a. And who did not know, means that, he acted as if he did not know about him. 9. He said to his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more numerous and stronger than we are. 10. Get ready, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they increase, and a war befall us. And they join our enemies and wage war against us and depart from the land. Get ready, let us deal shrewdly with them. Heb. Every, found in the Torah, is an expression of preparation and readiness. That is to say, prepare yourselves for this. Let us deal shrewdly with them, with the people of Israel. Let us act shrewdly regarding what to do to them. Our rabbis, however, interpreted that Pharaoh said, let us deal shrewdly with the Savior of Israel, thus interpreting as to him, by afflicting them, to die, with water, for he has already sworn that he would not bring a flood to the world. But they, the Egyptians, did not understand that upon the whole world he would not bring a flood, but he would bring it upon one nation in an old Rashi manuscript, from Sota 11a. And depart from the land, against our will. Our rabbis, however, interpreted, i.e., depicted Pharaoh, as a person who curses himself but ascribes his curse to others. And it is as if it were written, and we will depart from the land, and they will take possession of it. From Sota 11a. 11. So they appointed over them tax collectors to afflict them with their burdens, and they built store cities for Pharaoh, namely Pithom and Ramses. Over them, over the people. Tax collectors, heb, lit, tax officers. Denotes an expression of a tax, so denotes officers who collect the tax from them. Now what was the tax? That they build store cities for Pharaoh. To afflict them with their burdens, i.e., with the burdens of the Egyptians. Store cities, heb. As the Targum renders, cities of storehouses, and similarly, come to this treasurer, Isaiah 22 verse 15, to the treasurer appointed over the storehouses. From Exodus Rabbah 1:10. Pithom and Ramses, which were originally unfit for this, and they strengthened them and fortified them for storage. 12 But as much as they would afflict them, so did they multiply and so did they gain strength, and they were disgusted because of the children of Israel. But as much as they would afflict them, in whatever way they set their heart to afflict them, so was the heart of the Holy One, blessed be He, to multiply them and to strengthen them. So did they multiply and so did they gain strength, Heb, lit, so will they multiply and so will they gain strength. It means, however, so did they multiply and so did they gain strength. Its midrashic interpretation is, however, the Holy Spirit says this, you, Pharaoh, say, lest they multiply, but I say, so will they multiply. From Sota 11a. And they were disgusted with their lives. Others explain, and the Egyptians were disgusted with themselves, and it is easy to understand why. Our rabbis, however, interpreted it to mean that they, the Israelites, were like thorns in their eyes. From Sota 11a. 13 So the Egyptians enslaved the children of Israel with back-breaking labor. With back-breaking labor, Heb. With hard labor that crushes the body and breaks it. 14 And they embittered their lives with hard labor, with clay and with bricks and with all kinds of labor in the fields, all their work that they worked with them with back-breaking labor. 15 Now the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one who was named Shiphrah, and the second, who was named Puah. To the midwives, Heb. This is an expression similar, meaning, causing to give birth, but there is a light form and there is a heavy form, similar to, breaks, and, shatters, says, and, speaks. So R and Rashi classifies the Hebrew conjugations, those that have a dagesh in the second root letter, and those that do not. Of the 7 conjugations, 3 have a dagesh, and 4 do not. Since it is more difficult to pronounce the letters with the dagesh, those conjugations are referred to as the heavy form, and those without the dagesh are referred to as the light, Sefer HaZikaron. Shiphrah, this was Jochebed, called Shiphrah, because she beautified the newborn infant. From Sota 11b. Puah, this was Miriam, called Puah, because she cried, and talked and cooed to the newborn infant in the manner of women who soothe a crying infant. Is an expression of crying out, similar to like a traveling woman will I cry, Isaiah 42 verse 14. Rashi on Sota 11b explains that she played with the infant to soothe and amuse him. 16 And he said, when you deliver the Hebrew women, and you see on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall put him to death, but if it is a daughter, she may live. When you deliver, Heb, like. See Rashi on preceding verse. On the birth stool, Heb, the seed of the woman in childbirth, but elsewhere, Isaiah 37 verse 3, it is called similar to this, we find, who does work on the Jeremiah 18 verse 3, the seat, i.e., place, of the tools of a potter. Compare Commentary Digest in Judaica Press J 18.3. If it is a son, etc., Pharaoh cared only about the males, because his astrologers told him that a son was destined to be born who would save them. From Exodus Rabbah 1:18. She may live, Heb, she may live. 17 The midwives, however, feared God, so they did not do as the king of Egypt had spoken to them, but they enabled the boys to live. They provided water and food for them. From Sota 11b, the word is found in verse 17 and again in verse 18. The first is translated, and they enabled to live, and the second, and you enabled to live, because in Hebrew, for the feminine plural, this word and others like it are used as the third person past tense and the second person past tense, e.g., and they said, an Egyptian man, Exodus 2 verse 19, the past tense, like for the masculine plural, you have spoken, with your, Jeremiah 44 verse 25, an expression like the equivalent of for the masculine plural. Similarly, you have profaned me before my people, Ezekiel 13 verse 19. The past tense, an expression like the equivalent of for the masculine plural. If it was necessary to supply the infants with food, or Hacham asks why the midwives did not do it prior to Pharaoh's decree. He answers that the Torah means that despite Pharaoh's decree, the midwives continued their previous practice, that is, supplying needy children with nourishment. He suggests further that they particularly sustained the male children lest one die and they be suspected of being responsible for his death. Rashi explains that in the Hebrew, there is a conversive vav, turning past into future and future into past. Therefore, since the future forms of the feminine plural, both in the second person and in the third person, are identical, the same is true for the past forms with the conversive vav. Mizrachi, in Aramaic, however, since there is no conversive vav, the two past forms are different. Divrei David. Second portion. Exodus chapter 1. 18 So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this thing, that you have enabled the boys to live?" 19 And the midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are skilled as midwives. When the midwife has not yet come to them, they have, already, given birth. For they are skilled as midwives, Heb, as skillful as midwives." The Targum is our rabbis, Sota 11b, however, interpreted it to mean that they, the Israelite women, are compared to beasts of the field, which do not require midwives. Now where are they compared to beasts? A cub, and a grown lion, Genesis 49 verse 9, a wolf, he will prey, Genesis 49 verse 27, his firstborn bull, Deuteronomy 33 verse 17, a swift gazelle, Genesis 49 verse 21. Whoever was not compared to a beast as above, was included by scriptures in the expression, and blessed them, Genesis 49 verse 18. Scripture states further, "How was your mother a lioness?" Ezekiel 19 verse 2. From Sota 11b. 20 God benefited the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very strong. God benefited, Heb, bestowed goodness upon them. This is the difference in a word whose root is two letters and is prefixed by vav yud when it is used in the causative sense. The yud is vowelized with a tsirei, which is a kametz katan, or with a seagull, which is a padach katan. Example, God benefited the midwives, and he increased, in the daughter of Judah, Lamb 2:5, he increased pain, and he exiled the survivors. 2 Chronicles 36 verse 20, referring to Nebuzaradan, he exiled the survivors, and turned tail to tail, Jud 15:4, he turned the tails one to another. All these are the causative conjugation, lit, causing others to do. When it is used in the simple, kal conjugation, however, the yud is vowelized with a chirik, example, and it was pleasing in his eyes, Leviticus 10 verse 20, an expression meaning that it was good, and similarly, and the people multiplied, Exodus 1 verse 20. The people increased, and Judah went into exile. 2 Kings 25 verse 21, Judah was exiled, he turned this way and that way, Exodus 2 verse 12, he turned here and there. Do not refute me from, and, because these are not of the grammatical form of those, for the yud is the third radical in them, and, in which the yud is the third letter. God benefited the midwives. What was this benefit? 21 Now it took place when the midwives feared God, that he made houses for them. He made houses for them, the houses of the priesthood, the Levitic family, and the royal family, which are called houses, as it is written, and he built the house of the Lord and the house of the king. 1 Kings 9 verse 1, 5, the priesthood and the Levitic family from Jochebed and the royal family from Miriam, as is stated in Tractate Sota, 11b. 229. 22 And Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, Every son who is born you shall cast into the Nile, and every daughter you shall allow to live. All his people, he issued this decree upon them as well. On the day Moses was born, his astrologers told him, Pharaoh, today the one who will save them has been born, but we do not know whether from the Egyptians or from the Israelites, but we see that he will ultimately be smitten through water. Therefore, on that day he issued a decree also upon the Egyptians, as it is said, every son who is born, and it does not say, who is born to the Hebrews. They did not know, however, that he, Moses, would ultimately suffer because of the water of Meribah, Numbers 20 verses 7 to 13, i.e., that he would not be permitted to enter the Holy Land. From Sota 12a, Exodus Rabbah 1:18, San 101b. Exodus chapter 2. 1. A man of the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. And married a daughter of Levi, he was separated from her because of Pharaoh's decree, and he remarried her. This is the meaning of went, that he followed, he went after, his daughter's advice that she said to him, your decree is harsher than, whereas Pharaoh issued a decree, only, against the males, you issued a decree, against the females as well, for none will be born. This comment is found in an old Rashi, and he took her back and married her a second time. She too was transformed to become like a young woman, physically, but she was, actually, 130 years old. For she was born when they came to Egypt and they stayed there 210 years. When they left, Moses was 80 years old. If so, when she conceived him, she was 130 years old, yet, Scripture calls her a daughter of Levi. From Sota 12a, Exodus Rabbah 1:19. 2. The woman conceived and bore a son, and, when she saw him that he was good, she hid him for 3 months. That he was good, when he was born, the entire house was filled with light. From Sota 12a, Exodus Rabbah 1:20. 3. When she could no longer hide him, she took, for him a reed basket, smeared it with clay and pitch, placed the child into it, and put it into the marsh at the Nile's edge. When she could no longer hide him, because the Egyptians counted her pregnancy from the day that he, Amram, took her back. She bore him after only 6 months and 1 day, Sota 12a, for a woman who gives birth to a 7-month child may give birth after incomplete months, Nida 38b, Rh 11a. And they searched after her at the end of 9 months. Read heb in the language of the Mishnah, and in French junk, read grass. This is a pliable substance, which withstands both soft things and hard things. From Sota 12a. With clay and pitch on the outside and clay on the inside, so that the righteous person, Moses, should not smell the foul odor of pitch. From Sota 12a. And put it into the marsh, heb. This is an expression meaning a marsh, rosy, y-l, in Old French, réseau in modern French, reed. Similar to it is reeds and rushes, shall be cut off, Isaiah 19 verse 6. From Sota 12b. For his sister stood from afar, to know what would be done to him. 5. Pharaoh's daughter went down to bathe, to the Nile, and her maidens were walking along the Nile, and she saw the basket in the midst of the marsh, and she sent her maidservant, and she took it. To bathe, to the Nile, heb, transpose the verse and explain it. Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe in it. Along the Nile, heb, next to the Nile, similar to, see, Joab's field is near mine, 2 Samuel 14 verse 30. Is a literal expression for hand, because a person's hand is near himself. Thus, the word denotes proximity. Our sages said, Sota 12b is an expression of death, similar to, behold, I am going to die, Genesis 25 verse 32. They, her maidens, were going to die because they protested against her when she wanted to take the basket. The text supports them, the sages, because, otherwise, why was it necessary to write, and her maidens were walking? Her maidservant, heb, her maidservant. Our sages, Sota 12b, however, interpreted it as an expression meaning a hand. The joint from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger is known as, hence the cubit measure bearing the name, which is the length of the arm from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. Following the rules of Hebrew grammar, however, it should have been vowelized, with a dagesh in the mem. They, however, interpreted to mean her hand, that she stretched out her hand, and her arm grew many cubits, so that she could reach the basket. From Sota 12b, Exodus Rabbah 1:23. 6. She opened it, and she saw him the child, and behold, he was a weeping lad, and she had compassion on him, and she said, "This is one of the children of the Hebrews." She opened it, and she saw him. Whom did she see? The child. Its midrashic interpretation is that she saw the Shekhinah with him. From Sota 12b, Exodus Rabbah 123. And behold, he was a weeping lad, even though he was an infant, his voice was like that of a lad. From Sota 12b. 7. His sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call for you a wet nurse from the Hebrew women, so that she shall nurse the child for you?" From the Hebrew women, this teaches us that she had taken him around to many Egyptian women to nurse, but he did not nurse because he was destined to speak with the Shekhinah. From Sota 12b, Exodus Rabbah 125. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." So the girl went and called the child's mother. So the girl went, Heb. She went with alacrity and vigor like a youth. From Sota 12b. 9. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. Take Heb. She prophesied but did not know what she prophesied. She said, "This one is yours." From Sota 12b, Exodus Rabbah 125. The child grew up, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became like her son. She named him Moses, and she said, "For I drew him from the water." For I drew him from the water, Heb. The Targum renders, which is an Aramaic expression of drawing out, similar to the expression, like one who draws a hair out of milk, br. 8a, and in Hebrew, is an expression meaning I have removed, like shall not move away, Josh 1:8, did not move away, Numbers 14 verse 44. Munakim classified in this way, i.e., under the root in Machbereth Munakim, page 120. I say, however, that it does not belong in the classification of an, but it is derived from the root, and it means taking out, and similarly, he drew me out of many waters, 2 Samuel 22 verse 17. For if it were of the classification of the word, it would be inappropriate to say, but, as one says, from to rise, I set up, and from to return, I brought back, and from to come, I brought. Or, like an I will remove the iniquity of that land. Zechariah 3 verse 9. But is only from the root of a word whose verb form is formed with a hey at the end of the word, like to take out, to build, to do, to command, to turn. When one comes to say in any of these verbs, I did, i.e., first person past tense, a yud replaces the hey, I did, I built, I turned, I commanded. Third portion. Exodus chapter 2. 11. Now it came to pass in those days that Moses grew up and went out to his brothers and looked at their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man of his brothers. Moses grew up, was it not already written, the child grew up? Rabbi Judah the son of Rabbi Eli said, the first one was Moses' growth in height, and the second one was his growth in greatness, because Pharaoh appointed him over his house. From Tenshuma Buber, Vera 17. And looked at their burdens, he directed his eyes and his heart to be distressed over them. From Exodus Rabbah 127. An Egyptian man, he was a taskmaster appointed over the Israelite officers. He would wake them when the rooster crowed, to call them to their work. From Exodus Rabbah 128. Striking a Hebrew man, he was lashing and driving him, and he, the Hebrew man, was the husband of Shelemith the daughter of Dibri, who was mentioned in Leviticus 24 verse 10, and he, the taskmaster, laid his eyes on her. So he woke him, the Hebrew, at night and took him out of his house, and he, the taskmaster, returned and entered the house and was intimate with his wife while she thought that he was her husband. The man returned home and became aware of the matter. When that Egyptian saw that he had become aware of the matter, he struck him and drove him all day, from Exodus Rabbah 128. 12 He turned this way and that way, and he saw that there was no man, so he struck the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He turned this way and that way, he saw what he, the Egyptian, had done to him, the Hebrew, in the house and what he had done to him in the field, Exodus Rabbah 128. But according to its simple meaning, it is to be interpreted according to its apparent meaning, i.e., he looked in all directions and saw that no one had seen him slay the Egyptian. And he saw that there was no man, i.e., he saw that there was no man destined to be descended from him, the Egyptian, who would become a proselyte, i.e., a convert. From Exodus Rabbah 129. 13 He went out on the second day, and behold, 2 Hebrew men were quarreling, and he said to the wicked one, Why are you going to strike your friend? 2 Hebrew men were quarreling, Dathan and Abiram. They were the ones who saved some of the manna, when they had been forbidden to leave it overnight, as in Exodus 16 verses 19 and 20. From Exodus Rabbah 129. Quarreling, Heb, fighting. Why are you going to strike? Although he had not struck him, he is called wicked for merely raising his hand to strike him. From San. 58b. Your friend, a wicked man like you. From Exodus Rabbah 129. 14 And he retorted, Who made you a man, a prince, and a judge over us? Do you plan to slay me as you have slain the Egyptian? Moses became frightened and said, Indeed, the matter has become known. Who made you a man, you are still a youth. From Tanshuma, Shimot 10. Do you plan to slay me, lit, do you say to slay me? From here we learned that he slew him with the ineffable name. From Tanshuma, Shemot 10. Moses became frightened, to be explained, according to its simple meaning, that Moses was afraid Pharaoh would kill him. Midrashically, it is interpreted to mean that he was worried because he saw in Israel wicked men, i.e., informers. He said, Since this is so, perhaps they, the Israelites, do not deserve to be redeemed from slavery. From Tanshuma, Shemot 10. Indeed, the matter has become known, to be interpreted, according to its apparent meaning, that it was known that he had slain the Egyptian. Its midrashic interpretation, however, is, the matter I was wondering about, i.e., why the Israelites are considered more sinful than all the 70 nations of the world, to be subjugated with backbreaking labor, has become known to me. Indeed, I see that they deserve it. From Exodus Rabbah 130. 15 Pharaoh heard of this incident, and he sought to slay Moses, so Moses fled from before Pharaoh. He stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Pharaoh heard, they informed on him. And he sought to slay Moses, he delivered him to the executioner to execute him, but the sword had no power over him. That is, the meaning of what Moses said, and he saved me from Pharaoh's, Exodus 18 verse 4. From Mechilta, Yithro 1, Exodus Rabbah 1:321. He stayed in the land of Midian, Heb, he tarried there, like Jacob dwelt, Genesis 37 verse 1. And he sat down by a well, Heb, an expression of sitting. He learned from Jacob, who met his mate at a well. From Exodus Rabbah 132, Tanshuma, Shemoth 10, the comment on the sentence he stayed in the land of Midian does not appear in some editions of Rashi. Therefore, it is enclosed within parentheses. The first sentence of the second paragraph does not appear in the Miroth Gedaloth. It does, however, appear in all other editions of Rashi. Perhaps it was unintentionally omitted. Rashi intends here to differentiate between the first and the second. He explains that the first means staying, residing, or tarrying, signifying that Moses resided in Midian. The second denotes, literally, sitting, meaning that Moses sat down by a well. The sages of the Midrashim teach us that Moses sat there intentionally, for he expected to meet his mate, just as Jacob had met Rachel and Eliezer had met Rebekah when he sought a mate for Isaac. Otherwise, Moses would not have sat by the well simply to watch how the flocks were being watered. 16 Now the chief of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and they filled the troughs to water their father's flocks. Now the chief of Midian had Heb, i.e., the most prominent among them. He had abandoned idolatry, so they banned him from living with them. From Exodus Rabbah 132, Tanshuma, Shemot 11. The troughs, pools of running water, made in the ground. 17 But the shepherds came and drove them away, so Moses arose and rescued them and watered their flocks. And drove them away, because of the ban. From Exodus Rabbah 132, Tanshuma, Shemot 11. 18 They came to their father Reuel, and he said, Why have you come so quickly today? 19 They replied, An Egyptian man rescued us from the hand of the shepherds, and he also drew water for us and watered the flocks. 20 He said to his daughters, So where is he? Why have you left the man? Invite him, and let him eat bread. Why have you left the man? He recognized him, Moses, as being of the seed of Jacob, for the water rose toward him. From Exodus Rabbah 132, Tanshuma Shemot 11. And let him eat bread, perhaps he will marry one of you, as it is said, except the bread that he ate, Genesis 39 verse 6, alluding to Potiphar's wife. From Exodus Rabbah 132, Tanshuma, Shemot 11. 21 Moses consented to stay with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses. Consented, Heb, as the Targum, Onkelos, renders, and similar to this, except, now and lodge, Jud. 19:6, Would that we had been content, Josh 7:7, Behold now I have desired, Genesis 18 verse 31. Its midrashic interpretation is an expression of an oath. He, Moses, swore to him that he would not move from Midian except with his consent. From Exodus Rabbah 133, Tanshuma, Shemot 12. 22 She bore a son, and he named him Gershom, for he said, I was a stranger in a foreign land. 23 Now it came to pass in those many days that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed from the labor, and they cried out, and their cry ascended to God from the labor. Now it came to pass in those many days, that Moses sojourned in Midian, that the king of Egypt died, and Israel required a salvation, and Moses was pasturing, and a salvation came through him. Therefore, these sections were juxtaposed, i.e., the section dealing with the king of Egypt's affliction, and that dealing with Moses pasturing flocks. From an old Rashi. That the king of Egypt died, he was stricken, and he would slaughter Israelite infants and bathe in their blood. From Exodus Rabbah 134. 24 God heard their cry, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. Their cry, Heb, their cry, similar to from the city, people groan, Job 24 verse 12. His covenant with Abraham, Heb, the equivalent of, with Abraham. 25 And God saw the children of Israel, and God knew. He focused his attention, he set his heart, upon them, and did not conceal his eyes from them. Fourth portion. Exodus chapter 3. 1 Moses was pasturing the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law, the chief of Midian, and he led the flocks after the free pasture land, and he came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. After the free pasture land, to distance himself from the possibility of the theft, so that they, the flocks, would not pasture in others' fields. From Exodus Rabbah 2:3. To the mountain of God. Mount Horeb is called the mountain of God, in view of the events of the future. 2 An angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from within the thorn bush, and behold, the thorn bush was burning with fire, but the thorn bush was not being consumed. In a flame of fire, Heb, in a flame of the fire, the heart of fire, like the heart of the heavens, Deuteronomy 4 verse 11, in the heart of the terebinth, 2 Samuel 18 verse 14. Do not wonder about the tav, for we have an instance similar to this. How degenerate is your heart, Ezekiel 16 verse 30. From within the thorn bush, but not from any other tree, because of I am with him in distress. Psalms 91 verse 15. From Tanshuma, Shemot 14. Being consumed, Heb, consumed, like with which no work has been done. Deuteronomy 21 verse 3, whence he had been taken. Genesis 3 verse 23. 3. So Moses said, Let me turn now and see this great spectacle. Why does the thorn bush not burn up? Let me turn now, let me turn away from here to draw near to there. For the Lord saw that he had turned to see, and God called to him from within the thorn bush, and he said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. 5. And he said, Do not draw near here. Take your shoes off your feet, because the place upon which you stand is holy soil. Take your shoes off, Heb, pull off and remove, similar to, and the iron, axe head, will slip off. Deuteronomy 19 verse 5, for your olive tree will drop its fruit. Deuteronomy 28 verse 40. Is holy soil, lit, it is holy soil. The place. 6. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, because he was afraid to look toward God. 7. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry because of their slave drivers, for I know their pains. For I know their pains, this is similar to, and God knew, Exodus 2 verse 25. That is to say, for I set my heart to contemplate and to know their pains, and I have not hidden my eyes, neither will I block my ears from their cry. 8. I have descended to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up from that land, to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. 9. And now, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression that the Egyptians are oppressing them. 10. So now come, and I will send you to Pharaoh, and take my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So now come, and I will send you, etc. And if you ask of what help will this be, and take my people out? Your words will help, and you will take them out of there. 11. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should take the children of Israel out of Egypt? Who am I, of what importance am I that I should speak with kings? And that I should take the children of Israel out, and even if I am of importance, what merit do the Israelites have that a miracle should be wrought for them, and I should take them out of Egypt? 12. And he said, For I will be with you, and this is the sign for you that it was I who sent you. When you take the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. And he said, For I will be with you. He, God, answered his former question first, and his latter question last. Concerning what you said, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? This mission is not yours but mine, for I will be with you. And this vision which you have seen in the thorn bush is the sign for you that it was I who sent you, and that you will succeed in my mission, and that I am able to save you. Just as you saw the thorn bush performing my mission and not being harmed, so will you go on my mission and not be harmed. Concerning what you asked, what merit do the Israelites have that they should go out of Egypt? I have a great thing, dependent, on this exodus, for at the end of 3 months from their exodus from Egypt they are destined to receive the Torah on this mountain. Another explanation, for I will be with you, and this, namely, that you will succeed in your mission, on which I am sending you, is the sign for you for another promise, which I promise you, namely, that when you take them out of Egypt, you will serve God on this mountain, for you will receive the Torah on it, and that is the merit that will stand up for Israel. Similar to this expression, where a future event serves as a sign for a still more distant event, we find, and this shall be the sign, for you, this year you shall eat what grows by itself, etc. Isaiah 37 verse 30, 2 Kings 19 verse 29. Sennacherib's downfall will be a sign for you regarding another promise, i.e., that your land is desolate of fruit, and I will bless what grows by itself. 13. And Moses said to God, Behold, I come to the children of Israel, and I say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name, what shall I say to them? 14 God said to Moses, Ihye Asher Ihye, I will be what I will be, and he said, so shall you say to the children of Israel, Ihye, I will be, has sent me to you. Ihye Asher Ihye, I will be what I will be, I will be with them in this predicament what I will be with them in their subjugation by other kingdoms. He, Moses, said before him, O Lord of the universe, why should I mention to them another trouble? They have enough problems with this one. He said to him, You have spoken well. So shall you say, etc. From Br. 9b. Not that Moses, God forbid, outsmarted God, but he did not understand what God meant, because originally, when God said, I will be what I will be, he told this to Moses alone, and he did not mean that he should tell it to Israel. That is the meaning of you have spoken well, for that was my original intention, that you should not tell such things to the children of Israel, only so shall you say to the children of Israel, Ihye, I will be, has sent me. From Tractate Barakoth, this appears to be the correct interpretation. Give this matter your deliberation. Annotation to Rashi, there appears to be no indication of this interpretation in Tractate Barakoth. 15 And God said further to Moses, So shall you say to the children of Israel, The Lord God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is how I should be mentioned in every generation. This is my name forever, Heb, it is spelled, without a vav, meaning, conceal it, God's name, so, that it should not be read as it is written. From Pes. 50a, since the vav of is missing, we are to understand it as to conceal, meaning that the pronunciation of the way God's name is written is to be concealed. From Pes. 50a. And this is how I should be mentioned. He, God, taught him, Moses, how it was to be read, and so does David say, O Lord, your name is forever, O Lord, the mention of your name is for every generation. Psalms 135 verse 14. From Pes. 50a. Fifth portion. Exodus chapter 3. 16 Go and assemble the elders of Israel, and say to them, The Lord God of your forefathers has appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I have surely remembered you and what is being done to you in Egypt. The elders of Israel, those devoted to study, for if you say that it means ordinary elderly men, how was it possible for him to gather all the elderly men of a nation of 600,000? From Yoma 28b. 17 And I said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt, to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. 18 And they will hearken to your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and you shall say to him, The Lord God of the Hebrews has happened upon us, and now, let us go for a 3 days' journey in the desert and offer up sacrifices to the Lord, our God. And they will hearken to your voice. As soon as you say this expression, I have surely remembered you, to them, they will hearken to your voice, for this password was transmitted to them from Jacob and from Joseph, that with this expression they will be redeemed. Jacob said to them, And God will surely remember you, Genesis 50 verse 24. Joseph said to them, God will surely remember you, Genesis 50 verse 25. From Exodus Rabbah 3:11. God of the Hebrews, Heb the Yud is superfluous. It alludes to the 10 plagues. From an old Rashi. Has happened upon us, Heb, an expression of an occurrence, and similarly, God happened, Numbers 23 verse 4, and I will be met by him there, Numbers 23 verse 15. 19 However, I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go, except through a mighty hand. The king of Egypt will not permit you to go, if I do not show him my mighty hand, i.e., as long as I do not show him my mighty hand, he will not let you go. Will not permit, heb, lit, will not give. In this case, however, Onkelos renders, will not permit, similar to therefore, I did not let you, Genesis 20 verse 6, but God did not let him harm me, Genesis 31 verse 7, but they all are expressions of giving. They are basically expressions of giving, in these cases, giving permission. Others explain, and not because his hand is mighty, for as soon as I stretch forth my hand and smite the Egyptians, etc. The Targum renders it, and not because his strength is mighty. This was told to me in the name of Rabbi Jacob the son of Rabbi Menachem. 20 And I will stretch forth my hand and smite the Egyptians with all my miracles that I will wreak in their midst, and afterwards he will send you out. 21 And I will put this people's favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and it will come to pass that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. 22 Each woman shall borrow from her neighbor and from the dweller in her house silver and gold objects and garments, and you shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, and you shall empty out Egypt. And from the dweller in her house, from the one who lives with her in the same house. And you shall empty out, Heb, as the Targum renders, and you shall empty out. And likewise, and they emptied out Egypt, Exodus 12 verse 36, and the children of Israel stripped themselves of their ornaments, Exodus 33 verse 6. Hence, the Nun is a root letter. Menachem, however, classified it in the classification of the Tzadi, Machbereth Menachem page 149, with thus, God separated your father's livestock, Genesis 31 verse 9, that God separated from our father, Genesis 31 verse 16. His words are, however, incorrect, because if the Nun were not part of the root, since it is vowelized with a chirik, the word would not be used in the active sense for the second person masculine plural, but in the passive form for the second person masculine plural, similar to, and you shall be uprooted from the land, Deuteronomy 28 verse 63, and you shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy, Leviticus 26 verse 25. And you will be beaten before your enemies, Leviticus 26 verse 17, and you will be melted in its midst, Ezekiel 22 verse 21, and say, we are saved, Jeremiah 7 verse 10, a passive expression in the first person plural. Every nun that is sometimes in the root and, sometimes, is missing, like the nun of, beats, carries, gives, bites, when it is used in the active second person plural, is vowelized with a vocalized schwa, example, and you shall carry your father, Genesis 45 verse 19, and you shall give to them, Numbers 32 verse 29, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, Genesis 17 verse 11. Therefore, I say that this nun, which is vowelized with a chirik, is part of the root, and the noun is, which is a heavy expression, with a dage in the second letter, like speech, atonement, teaching, and when one speaks in the second person plural, it, the first root letter of the verb, is vowelized with a chirik, like, and you shall speak, to the rock. Numbers 20 verse 8, and expiate, the house, Ezekiel 45 verse 20, and you shall teach them to your sons, Deuteronomy 11 verse 19. Exodus chapter 4. 1 Moses answered and said, behold, they will not believe me, and they will not heed my voice, but they will say, the Lord has not appeared to you. 2 And the Lord said to him, what is this in your hand? And he said, a staff. What is this in your hand, Heb, an unusual spelling? Its usual spelling is in 2 words. It is written as 1 word to imply the meaning. From this, in your hand you are liable to be stricken because you have suspected innocent people, Exodus Rabbah 3:12. Its simple meaning is that God is talking to Moses, as a person who says to his friend, do you admit that this before you is a stone? He answers him, yes. Well, I will make it into a tree. 3 And he said, cast it to the ground, and he cast it to the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from before it. And it became a serpent dash. This was how he hinted to him, Moses, that he had spoken ill of Israel, by saying, they will not believe me, and he had adopted the art of the serpent. From Exodus Rabbah 3:12. 4 And the Lord said to Moses, stretch forth your hand and take hold of its tail. So Moses stretched forth his hand and grasped it, and it became a staff in his hand. And grasped it dash, Heb. This is an expression of taking hold, and there are many such words in Scripture, example, and the men took hold of his hand, Genesis 19 verse 16, and she grabbed his private parts, Deuteronomy 25 verse 11, and I took hold of his jaw, 1 Samuel 17 verse 35. Every expression of attached to a beth denotes taking hold. 5 in order that they believe that the Lord, the God of their forefathers, has appeared to you, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. 6 And the Lord said further to him, Now put your hand into your bosom, and he put his hand into his bosom, and he took it out, and behold, his hand was leprous like snow. His hand was leprous like snow. It is usual for psorias, leprosy, to be white, as we find if it be a white blemish. Vayikra 13:4, with this sign, too, he hinted to him that he spoke slanderously when he said, They will not believe me. It is for this reason that he struck him with psorias, just as Miriam was struck for speaking slanderously. 7 And he said, Put your hand back into your bosom, and he put his hand back into his bosom, and, when he took it out of his bosom, it had become again like the rest of his flesh. And, when he took it out of his bosom, from here we learn that the divine measure of good comes quicker than the measure of retribution, for in the first instance, verse 6, it does not say, from his bosom. From Shab 97a, Exodus Rabbah 3:13. 8 And it will come to pass, that if they do not believe you, and they do not heed the voice of the first sign, they will believe the voice of the last sign. They will believe the voice of the last sign, when you tell them, Because of you I was stricken, because I spoke ill of you, they will believe you, for they have already learned that those who trespass against them are stricken with plagues, such as Pharaoh and Abimelech, who were punished, because of Sarah. 9 And it will come to pass, if they do not believe either of these two signs, and they do not heed your voice, you shall take of the water of the Nile and spill it upon the dry land, and the water that you take from the Nile will become blood on the dry land. You shall take of the water of the Nile. He hinted to them that with the first plague he exacts retribution upon their deities. This means that when the Holy One, blessed be He, exacts retribution upon the nations, He first exacts retribution upon their deities, for they, the Egyptians, worshipped the Nile, which afforded them sustenance, and He turned them, the deities, i.e., the Nile, into blood. From an old Rashi. And the water will become, the word, will become, appears twice. The verse means literally, and will be, meaning that the water that you will take from the Nile will become blood on dry land. It seems to me that if it said, and will be, the water that you will take from the Nile will become blood on dry land, I understand that it means that in his hand it would turn into blood, and also when it descended to earth, it would remain as it is. But now it, the text, teaches us that it would not become blood until on dry land. 10 Moses said to the Lord, I beseech you, O Lord. I am not a man of words, neither from yesterday nor from the day before yesterday, nor from the time you have spoken to your servant, for I am heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue. Neither from yesterday, etc. We learn, from this, that for a full 7 days the Holy One, blessed be He, was enticing Moses in the thorn bush to go on his mission, from yesterday, from the day before yesterday, from the time you have spoken. Thus there are 3 days, and the 3 times is mentioned, are inclusive words, adding up to 6, and he was presently in the 7th day when he further said to him, Send now with whom you would send, verse 13, until he became angry. Verse 14, and complained about him. All this reluctance was because he, Moses, did not want to accept a position higher than his brother Aaron, who was his senior and was a prophet, as it is said, Did I appear to the house of your father when they were in Egypt? 1 Samuel 2 verse 27, Your father means Aaron. Similarly, and made myself known to them in the land of Egypt, Ezekiel 20 verse 5, And I said to them, Every man cast away the despicable idols from before his eyes, Ezekiel 20 verse 7. And that prophecy was said to Aaron. From Exodus Rabbah 3:16. Heavy of mouth, I speak with difficulty, and in Old French it is balbou, stammer. 11 But the Lord said to him, Who gave man a mouth, or who makes, 1, dumb or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Who gave man a mouth, who taught you to speak when you were being judged before Pharaoh concerning the Egyptian you killed? Or who makes, 1, dumb, who made Pharaoh dumb, that he did not exert any effort to issue his command to kill you? And who made his servants deaf, so that they did not hear his commandment concerning you? And who made the executioners blind, that they did not see when you fled from the executioners' platform and escaped, from 10 Shemot 10. Is it not I, whose name is the Lord, who has done all this? 12 So now, go. I will be with your mouth, and I will instruct you what you shall speak. 13 But he said, I beseech you, O Lord, send now your message, with whom you would send. With whom you would send, with whom you are accustomed to sending, and this is Aaron. Another explanation, with someone else, with whom you wish to send, for I am not destined to bring them into the land of Israel, and to be their redeemer in the future. You have many messengers. 14 And the Lord's wrath was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is there not Aaron your brother, the Levite? I know that he will surely speak, and behold, he is coming forth toward you, and when he sees you, he will rejoice in his heart. Wrath was kindled, Rabbi Joshua ben Korcha says, in every instance that God's kindling anger is mentioned, i.e., that God's anger was sparked, in the Torah, it is stated that there was a consequence, i.e., it was followed by a punishment. In this instance, however, no consequence is stated, and we do not find that a punishment came to Moses after this kindling of anger. Rabbi Jose said to him, Here too you can see a consequence is stated, namely in the question, Is there not Aaron your brother, the Levite, who was destined to be a Levite and not a priest, Cohen? I had said that the priesthood would emanate from you, henceforth it will not be so, but he, Aaron, will be a priest and you the Levite, as it is said. But as for Moses, the man of God his sons were to be called in the tribe of Levi. 1 Chronicles 23 verse 14, from Zev. 102a. And behold, he is coming forth toward you, when you go to Egypt. And when he sees you, he will rejoice in his heart, not as you think, that he will resent your attaining a high position. Because of this, Aaron's goodness and humility, Aaron merited the ornament of the breastplate, which is placed over the heart, Exodus 28 verse 29. From Exodus Rabbah 3:17. 15 You shall speak to him, and you shall put the words into his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will instruct you, both, what you shall do. 16 And he will speak for you to the people, and it will be that he will be your speaker, and you will be his leader. And he will speak for you, Heb on your behalf he will speak to the people. This proves that every instance of, and used in conjunction with, speech, all denote on behalf of. Will be your speaker, lit, your mouth. He will be your interpreter, because you have a speech impediment. From Targumim. Leader, Heb, as a master and as a prince. 17 And you shall take this staff in your hand, with which you shall perform the signs. Sixth portion. Exodus chapter 4. 18 Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and he said to him, Let me go now and return to my brothers who are in Egypt, and let me see whether they are still alive. So Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. And returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, to take his leave, for he had sworn to him, Jethro, that he would not leave Midian except with his permission, Exodus Rabbah 4:1. And he had 7 names, Ruel, Jethro, Kenny, Hobab, Heber, and Putiel. From Machilta, Yithro 1:1, see Rashi on Exodus 18 verse 1 for the reasons for these names. The Lord said to Moses in Midian, Go, return to Egypt, for all the people who sought your life have died. For all the people have died. Who are they? Dathan and Abiram. They were, really, alive, but they lost their property, and a pauper is considered dead. From Ned. 64b. 20 So Moses took his wife and his sons, mounted them upon the donkey, and he returned to the land of Egypt, and Moses took the staff of God in his hand. Mounted them upon the donkey, the designated donkey. That is the donkey that Abraham saddled for the binding of Isaac, and that is the one upon whom the King Messiah is destined to appear, as it is said, humble, and riding a donkey, Zechariah 9 verse 9. From Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, ch. 31. And he returned to the land of Egypt, and Moses took the staff. Chronological order is not strictly adhered to in the scriptures. 21 The Lord said to Moses, When you go to return to Egypt, see all the signs that I have placed in your hand and perform them before Pharaoh, but I will strengthen his heart, and he will not send out the people. When you go to return to Egypt, you should know that with this intention you shall go, that you shall be steadfast in my mission, to perform all my signs before Pharaoh, and you shall not be afraid of him. That I have placed in your hand, he did not say this in reference to the three aforementioned signs, for he had not commanded that he, Moses, do them before Pharaoh but before Israel, in order that they would believe him, and we do not find that he performed them before him, Pharaoh. But, regarding signs that I am destined to put into your hand in Egypt, such as, when Pharaoh speaks to you, i.e., asking for you to perform signs, etc. Exodus 7 verse 9, do not wonder that it is written, that I have placed, i.e., implying the past tense, because this is what it means, when you speak to him, I will have already placed them into your hand. 22 And you shall say to Pharaoh, So said the Lord, my firstborn son is Israel. And you shall say to Pharaoh, when you hear that his heart is hard, and he refuses to send the Israelites out, say thus to him. My firstborn son. Firstborn is an expression of greatness, similar to I too, shall make him a firstborn, Psalms 89 verse 28. This is its simple meaning, but its midrashic interpretation is, Here the Holy One, blessed be he, acknowledged the sale of the birthright, which Jacob bought from Esau. From General Rabbah 63:14. 23 So I say to you, send out my son so that he will worship me, but if you refuse to send him out, behold, I am going to slay your firstborn son. So I say to you, in GDS name, send my son etc. Send out my son, but if you refuse to send him out, behold, I am going to slay, etc. That is the last plague, but he warned him, Pharaoh, about it first, because it was the most severe, and that is what Scripture says, Behold, God deals loftily in his power, Job 36 verse 22. Therefore, who is a teacher like him? A man of flesh and blood who seeks to avenge himself against his fellow, concealing his plans, so that he will not seek rescue, but the Holy One, blessed be he, deals loftily with his strength, and no one is able to escape from his hand, except by returning to him, by repenting. Therefore, he teaches him about possible punishment, and warns him to repent. From Tenshuma, Ve'era 14, Exodus Rabbah 9:9. 24 Now he was on the way, in an inn, that the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Now he was, i.e., Moses, on the way, in an inn and sought to put him to death. I.e., he sought, Moses, because he had neglected to circumcise his son Eleazar. Because he neglected it, he was to be punished with death. It was taught in Abratha, Rabbi Jose said, God forbid. Moses did not neglect it, but he reasoned, Shall I circumcise him and go forth on the road? It will be dangerous for the child for 3 days. Shall I circumcise him and wait 3 days? The Holy One, blessed be he, commanded me, Go, return to Egypt. Moses hurried to Egypt intending to circumcise Eleazar upon his return. Why, then, was he to be punished with death? Because first he busied himself with the details of his lodging. This appears in Tractate Nedarim 31b. The angel turned into a sort of serpent and swallowed him, Moses, from his head to his thighs, and then spit him out and swallowed him from his feet to his private parts. Zipporah therefore understood that it was because of the failure to perform the circumcision that this occurred. From Ned. 32a, Exodus Rabbah 5:5. 25 So Zipporah took a sharp stone and severed her son's foreskin and cast it to his feet, and she said, "For you are a bridegroom of blood to me." And cast it to his feet, she cast it before Moses' feet. From Yerushalmi, Ned. 3:9. And she said, about her son, "For you are a bridegroom of blood to me, you were a cause that my bridegroom would, almost, be murdered. You are to me the slayer of my bridegroom." 26 So he released him. Then she said, a bridegroom of blood concerning the circumcision. So he released, i.e., the angel, released, him. Then she understood that, it was, because of the circumcision that he had come to slay him. She said, a bridegroom of blood concerning the circumcision, my bridegroom would have been murdered because of the circumcision. Concerning the circumcision, Heb concerning the circumcision. This is a noun, and the lamb serves as an expression meaning concerning, similar to and Pharaoh will say concerning the children of Israel, Exodus 14 verse 3. Onkelos, however, translates as referring to the blood of the circumcision. 27 The Lord said to Aaron, "Go toward Moses, to the desert." So he went and met him on the mount of God, and he kissed him. 28 And Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord with which he had sent him and all the signs that he had commanded him. 29 So Moses and Aaron went, and they assembled all the elders of the children of Israel. 30 And Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses, and he performed the signs before the eyes of the people. 31 And the people believed, and they heard that the Lord had remembered the children of Israel and that he saw their affliction, and they kneeled and prostrated themselves. Seventh portion. Exodus chapter 5. 1 And afterwards, Moses and Aaron came and said to Pharaoh, "So said the Lord God of Israel, send out my people, and let them sacrifice to me in the desert." And afterwards, Moses and Aaron came, but the elders slipped away one by one from following Moses and Aaron, until they had all slipped away before they arrived at the palace. They did so, because they were afraid to go, and at Sinai, he punished them, as it is written, "And Moses shall draw near alone, but they shall not draw near," Exodus 24 verse 2. He sent them back. From Exodus Rabbah 5:14, Tanshuma, Shimot 24. 2 And Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should heed his voice to let Israel out? I do not know the Lord, neither will I let Israel out." 3 And they said, "The God of the Hebrews has happened upon us. Now let us go on a 3-day journey in the desert and sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he strike us with a plague or with the sword. Lest he strike us, Heb." They should have said, "Lest he strike you," but they imparted honor to the throne, and out of respect said this. The word denotes a fatal encounter. From Tanshuma, Ve'ara 2. For but the king of Egypt said to them, "Why, Moses and Aaron, do you disturb the people from their work? Go to your own labors." Do you disturb the people from their work, Heb, meaning, you separate them and take them away from their work, because they listen to you and expect to rest from their work. Similarly, avoid it, do not pass through it, Proverbs 4 verse 15, i.e., distance it. Similarly, and you have avoided all my advice, Proverbs 1 verse 25, that it was, Exodus 32 verse 25, i.e., distanced and despised. Go to your own labors, go to your work that you have to do in your houses. But, he could not have been referring to the Egyptian bondage, because Moses and Aaron were from the tribe of Levi and, the labor of the Egyptian bondage was not incumbent upon the tribe of Levi. You should know that this is true, for behold, Moses and Aaron were coming and going without permission. From Tanshuma, Ve'ara 6, Tanshuma Buber, Ve'ara 4. 5 And Pharaoh said, "Behold, now the people of the land are many, and you are stopping them from their labors. Behold, now the people of the land are many, those who are required to work, and you stop them from their labors. This is a great loss." 6 So, on that day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, The taskmasters, they were Egyptians, and the officers were Israelites. The taskmaster was appointed over many officers, and the officer was appointed to drive the workers. 7-inch. You shall not continue to give stubble to the people to make the bricks like yesterday and the day before yesterday. Let them go and gather stubble for themselves. Stubble, heb is stobel in Old French. They would knead it with the clay. Bricks, heb, tivels in Old French, toiles in Modern French, tiles, made from clay and dried in the sun. Some people fire them in a kiln. Like yesterday and the day before yesterday, as you have been doing until now. And gather, heb, and they shall gather. 8. But the number of bricks they have been making yesterday and the day before yesterday you shall impose upon them, you shall not reduce it, for they are lax. Therefore they cry out, saying, Let us go and sacrifice to our God. But the number of bricks, the sum of the number of bricks which each one made daily when they were given stubble, that sum you shall levy upon them now too, in order that the labor may fall heavy upon them. For they are lax from the work. Therefore their hearts turn to idleness, and they cry out, saying, Let us go, etc. For they are lax. The words, and, verse 18, mean the number of bricks, as in, and to him are deeds counted, 1 Samuel 2 verse 3, and the counted, money, 2 Kings 12 verse 12. All are terms denoting a quantity. Lax, heb. The work is neglected in their hands and abandoned by them, and they are withdrawing themselves from it, retres in Old French, meaning, withdrawn, removed. 9. Let the labor fall heavy upon the men and let them work at it, and let them not talk about false matters. And let them not talk about false matters, heb. Let them not constantly think and talk about matters of no substance, saying, Let us go, let us sacrifice. Similar to it is, and I shall constantly engage in your statutes, Psalms 119 verse 117. For an example and for a byword, Deuteronomy 28 verse 37, is rendered, by onkelos, as. And, the servant, told, Genesis 24 verse 66, is rendered. It is, however, impossible to say that is related to the expression of and the Lord turned to Abel, Gen 4:24, but to Cain and to his offering he did not turn, Genesis 4 verse 5, and to explain as and let them not turn. If this were the case, Scripture should have written, or, for that is the construction in all similar cases, example and shall turn, to, his Maker, Isaiah 17 verse 7. And he shall not turn, to, the altars. Isaiah 17 verse 8, and they did not turn, to, the Holy One of Israel, Isaiah 31 verse 1. I have not found the prefix beth immediately following them, after an expression of speech, however, concerning one who is engaged in speaking of a matter, the prefix beth is appropriate, example, who talk about you, Ezekiel 33 verse 30, Miriam and Aaron talked about Moses, Numbers 12 verse 1, the angel who spoke with me, Zechariah 4 verse 1, to speak of them, Deuteronomy 11 verse 19, and I shall speak of your testimonies, Psalms 119 verse 46. Here too, means, let them not engage in speaking of words of vanity and nonsense. 10. So the taskmasters of the people and their officers came out and spoke to the people, saying, So said Pharaoh, I am not giving you stubble. 11. You go take for yourselves stubble from wherever you find it, because nothing will be reduced from your work. You go take for yourselves stubble, and you must go with alacrity. Because nothing will be reduced from your work, from the entire amount of bricks that you were making daily, when you were given stubble prepared from the king's house. 12. So the people scattered throughout the entire land of Egypt, to gather a gleaning for stubble. To gather a gleaning for stubble, heb, to gather a gathering, to collect a collection for the stubble, needed, for the clay. A gleaning, heb, an expression of collecting. Since it is a substance that scatters and requires collecting, it is called in other places, also. 13. And the taskmasters were pressing them, saying, Finish your work, the requirement of each day in its day, just as when there was stubble. Were pressing them, heb, pressing dash, from Targumim. The requirement of each day in its day, the quota of each day complete in its, i.e., on the same day, as you did when the stubble was prepared, from Onkelos. 14 And the officers of the children of Israel whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had appointed over them were beaten, saying, Why have you not completed your quota to make bricks like the day before yesterday, neither yesterday nor today? And the officers of the children of Israel were beaten. The officers were Israelites, and they had pity on their fellows, and did not press them. They would turn the bricks over to the taskmasters, who were Egyptians, and when something was missing from the required amount, they, the Egyptians, would flog them, the officers, because they did not press the workers. Therefore those officers merited to become the Sanhedrin, and some of the spirit that was upon Moses was taken and placed upon them, as it is said, Gather to me 70 men of the elders of Israel, Numbers 11 verse 16, of those about whom you know the good that they did in Egypt, that they are the elders of the people and its officers, Ibid. From Tenshuma, Behalathika 13 and Sifri, Behalathika 92. And the officers of the children of Israel were beaten, i.e., those whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had appointed as officers over them, saying, Why, etc. Why were they beaten? Because they, the Egyptian taskmasters, said to them, the officers, Why have you not completed either yesterday or today the fixed quota set upon you to make bricks, as you did the third yesterday? This is the day before yesterday, which was when they had been given stubble. Were beaten, they were the object of an action. The word is in the hafal conjugation, the recipient of the hifil. They were beaten by others, the taskmasters beat them. 15 So the officers of the children of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh, saying, Why do you do this to your servants? 16 Stubble is not given to your servants, but they tell us, Make bricks, and behold, your servants are beaten, and your people are sinning. But they tell us, Make bricks, the taskmasters tell us, Make bricks, as many as the original number. And your people are sinning, Heb. If it were vowelized with a padach, I would say that it is connected, i.e., in the construct state, and so it means and this thing is the sin of your people. However, since it is vowelized with a comets, it is a noun in the absolute state, and this is its meaning, and this thing brings sin upon your people, as if it were written, like when they came to Bethlehem, Ruth 1 verse 19, which is the equivalent of, and similarly with many others. 17 But he said, You are lax, just lax. Therefore, you say, Let us go, let us sacrifice to the Lord. 18 And now, go and work, but you will not be given stubble. Nevertheless, the same number of bricks you must give. Nevertheless the same number of bricks, Heb, the count of the bricks, and similarly, the counted money, 2 Kings 12 verse 12, as is stated in that section, and packed and counted the money, 2 Kings 12 verse 11. From Onkelos. 19 The officers of the children of Israel saw them in distress, saying, Do not reduce the number of your bricks, the requirement of each day in its day. The officers of the children of Israel saw their fellows who were driven by them in distress. They saw them in the distress and trouble that befell them when they had to make the work heavy upon them, saying, Do not reduce, etc. 20 They met Moses and Aaron standing before them when they came out from Pharaoh's presence. They met, men of Israel, met Moses and Aaron, etc. Our rabbis expounded every instance of quarreling and standing is a reference to Dathan and Abiram, about whom it is said, came out and stood upright, Numbers 16 verse 27. From Ned. 64b. 21 And they said to them, May the Lord look upon you and judge, for you have brought us into foul odor in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants, to place a sword into their hand, to kill us. 22 So Moses returned to the Lord and said, O Lord, why have you harmed this people? Why have you sent me? Why have you harmed this people, and if you ask, what is it to you? I answer, I am complaining that you have sent me. From Tenshuma, Ve'era 6. 23 Since I have come to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has harmed this people, and you have not saved your people. He has harmed this people, Heb, a causative expression. He brought much harm upon them, and the Targum renders. Exodus chapter 6. 1. And the Lord said to Moses, Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a mighty hand he will send them out, and with a mighty hand he will drive them out of his land. Now you will see, etc. You have questioned my ways, of running the world, which is, unlike Abraham, to whom I said, For in Isaac will be called your seed, Genesis 21 verse 12, and afterwards I said to him, Bring him up there for a burnt offering, Genesis 22 verse 2, yet he did not question me. Therefore, now you will see. What is done to Pharaoh you will see, but not what is done to the kings of the 7 nations when I bring them, the children of Israel, into the land of Israel. From San 111a. For with a mighty hand he will let them go, because of my mighty hand, which will overpower Pharaoh, he will let them go. And with a mighty hand he will drive them out of his land, against Israel's will he will drive them out, and they will not have time to make provisions for themselves, and so he says, and the Egyptians pressed the people strongly, etc. Exodus 12 verse 33.